Our friend George Will calls conventions the seventh inning stretch of presidential campaigns. So halfway through, where do we stand?
What a welcome, Cincinnati. Thank you so much.
The race is still pretty much a tie. Early polls show only a slight bounce for Mitt Romney so far. But his crowds in Ohio and Florida yesterday were huge. And the Republican nominee tried to reach beyond his base by admitting his party's mistakes.
We're going to finally have to do something that Republicans have spoken about for a long time, and for a while, we didn't do it. When we had the lead, we let people down. We need to make sure we don't lead them down this time. I will cut the deficit and get us on track to a balanced budget.
President Obama was on offense in another battleground, Iowa. His take on the Republican convention, he called it a tired TV rerun in black and white.
When Governor Romney had his chance to let you in on his secret sauce, he didn't offer you a single new idea. It was just a retread of the same old policies that have been sticking it to the middle class for years.
And as the president makes his way to North Carolina for the start of the Democratic convention on Tuesday, we are joined by his top White House strategist, David Plouffe. Good morning, Mr. Plouffe.
Morning, George.
Thanks for joining us today. You know, the core of Governor Romney's argument was pretty straightforward. His answer to the classic Reagan question. Take a look.
This president can ask us to be patient. This president can tell us it was someone else's fault. This president can tell us that the next 4 years he'll get it right. But this president cannot tell us that you're better off today than when he took office.
Is he right? Can the president argue unequivocally that Americans are better off today than they were 4 years ago?
Listen, George, I think the American people understand that we got into a terrible economic situation, a recession, that the Great Depression is the only thing the country's ever seen like it. So they know we had a deep hole. It took us a long time to get into that hole. It's going to take us a long time to get out of it. First of all, Governor Romney's offering the same exact policies that led to the recession in the first place. One thing they didn't do last week in Tampa is explain how huge tax cuts for the wealthy, cutting back regulations on Wall Street, is going to lead to economic growth or help the middle class. Because the answer is it's not. So what we're going to lay out this week is we're going to explain to the American people in the middle class of this country how we're going to continue to recover, but do more than just recover from the recession, to build an economy from the middle out. What Mitt Romney is going to offer America is top-down, trickle-down fairy dust. It didn't work then. It's not going to work now. And I don't think he advanced the ball last week in convincing people, particularly the middle class in this country, that he would be a president that has them every day in mind as he's making decisions.
But yes or no, are Americans better off today than they were 4 years ago?
Listen, George, they did a good job of reciting all the statistics everyone's familiar with. I think everybody understands we were this close to a Great Depression because of the leadership of this president. We staved that off. We're beginning to recover. We have a lot more work to do. We need to grow jobs more quickly. We need to grow middle-class incomes more quickly. But the question for the American people is, which path are we going to take? If we take Mitt Romney's path, economists have looked at this. The recovery would slow down. We wouldn't produce jobs. He'd give huge tax cuts to people like himself and send the bill to the middle class and seniors. So the question is, we're going to be far worse off if Mitt Romney is elected president and he gets a chance to enact the same economic policies that created the mess in the first place.
So it sounds like, a year ago the president told me, I don't think Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago. You still can't say yes.
Well, we've clearly improved, George, from the depths of the recession. We were losing 800,000 jobs a month. We're now gaining them. The unemployment rate was around 10. It's come down. We're beginning to see a manufacturing sector emerge. One of the great bright spots right now is we're adding manufacturing jobs. The American automotive industry was close to extinction. Mitt Romney would have let it go away, by the way. We wouldn't have an American automotive industry if he was president. President Obama secured that. We're beginning to really make advances in alternative energy, in things like batteries. So we've made a lot of progress from the depths of the recession. We have a lot more work to do. And that's the question we're going to lay out for the American people is the Romney path would be the wrong path for the middle class, the wrong path for this country. We've got to continue to recover, not just from the recession, but again, how do we build an economy from the middle out? So that we have an economy, tax policy, all centered on how do we make the middle class more secure in this country.
Let me ask you another question about the president's speech. You heard Mitt Romney's pitch to those disappointed Obama voters. Does the president need some sort of mea culpa to get them back?
Listen, I think this president, next week, what we're going to do today in Colorado, through the duration of this campaign, is going to explain, what he did to move us away from, again, we were on the precipice of Great Depression, health care, ending the Iraq War, focusing on rebuilding this country. I think the American people know that we've got a tough economy. Largely what the Republican convention last week was hiding their own agenda, a bunch of platitudes and angry insults, and reminding people that we've got a tough economy. People know that. They want to know how we're going to move forward. And I think we have, energized here in Colorado today, great volunteers. We're beginning to see great voter registration in the battleground states. So we think we're going to be able to build the kind of excitement on the ground to win this election. But again, I think the question for the American people, particularly for the middle class voters in this country and Americans, is who do you trust to make economic decisions with you at the core?
And one of those economic decisions,
Mitt Romney's Mitt Romney's going to make every decision through the prism of he believes that if people like him get a huge tax cut, somehow that's going to trickle down to everybody else. And that's simply not the recipe for growth in this country.
Another big economic decision people are going to have to make is about Medicare. And, Medicare has been a political winner for Democrats for a generation. But in his convention speech, Paul Ryan really seemed to signal that the Republicans aren't going to cede that ground at all. His essential message was bring it on. Here he was.
In this election, on this issue, the usual posturing on the left isn't going to work. Mitt Romney and I know the difference between protecting a program and raiding it. Ladies and gentlemen, our nation needs this debate. We want this debate. We will win this debate.
Of course, he took on those more than $700 billion in savings in the president's health care plan. We all know that those same savings were included in Congressman Ryan's budget as well. But the Republicans made some headway with this argument in 2010. Are you worried about it now?
George, this is a place where we're in full agreement with Paul Ryan. We think this is an important debate to have, and we're anxious to have it. First of all, it's remarkable. When Paul Ryan was first picked as Mitt Romney's vice president, it was praised because here's someone who's going to tell hard truths. I mean, he sounded like the second coming of Claude Pepper. It was last week. Okay, let's be clear about, first of all, the president's approach to Medicare, which was supported by AARP, extended Medicare solvency for 8 years. The savings all came from waste and fraud and subsidies that shouldn't have been going to the insurance companies. Not a dime came from Medicare beneficiaries. The Romney-Ryan approach is to voucherize Medicare. So when you run out of your voucher, seniors are going to be on their own. It's estimated the Ryan plan would add $6,400 to every Medicare
That's the old Ryan plan, isn't it? It's not the...
And so this is... Well, George, so here's the thing. And the Romney-Ryan approach would bankrupt Medicare in 4 years. So you've got solvency through the president's approach of Medicare, bankruptcy through the Romney-Ryan approach. You've got the president getting savings from the system, from insurance companies, from fraud, from waste. You've got the Romney-Ryan approach, which is we're going to get all the money from Medicare beneficiaries. So I think on the question in Florida and Ohio and other states of who do you trust to protect Medicare? And who do you trust as we reduce our deficit to get the savings from the system, not putting it on the backs of Medicare beneficiaries? We think that's a debate we're well positioned to have, to execute, and to win.
So that's somewhere you agree, as you said, with Paul Ryan. One place you disagree with the Romney and Ryan ticket is the ads they've been sending out on welfare reform. Neither Governor Romney nor Congressman Ryan mentioned welfare in their convention speeches, but here's the ad they've been running in a lot of battleground states.
President Obama quietly announced a plan to gut welfare reform by dropping work requirements. Under Obama's plan, you wouldn't have to work and wouldn't have to train for a job. They just send you your welfare check. And welfare to work goes back to being plain old welfare.
I know you disagree with the ad, and a lot of independent fact checkers have backed you up on that. My question is, it hasn't seemed to deter Governor Romney. The question is why? And many of your supporters have accused the Romney team of playing the race card. Debbie Wasserman Schultz, the DNC chair, called it, quote, a dog whistle for voters who consider race when casting their ballot. Does the president agree with that?
Well, first, George, on Medicare, I want to make clear I don't agree with Paul Ryan. I agree that it's an important debate for the country.
That was
we could
clearly
not
what I was
have
trying to
different
say,
approaches to Medicare. So first of all, George, right now, their campaign is built on a tripod of lies. A welfare attack that is just absolutely untrue. The suggestion we're raiding Medicare, absolutely untrue. And then this whole we can't build it nonsense. The president, as I think everybody in America does, believes that small businesses are built through the drive and innovation and hard work. The point he was trying to make is things like education, roads, or infrastructure is something we all do together. So it's amazing, by the way. I don't think we've ever seen a presidential campaign, ever, that's built on a foundation of absolute lies. And I think ultimately they're going to pay a price for that. On welfare, it's absolutely untrue. Everyone who's looked at it is outraged that they're making this. The president actually, these waivers strengthen work. You'd have to get 20% more work in the state to even qualify. Now, as to their motivations, I'll leave that to them. It is remarkable that the entire Romney theory of the campaign
says it's a dog whistle playing on racial resentment.
Well, listen, I think that they'll have to answer what they're trying to do. I think they are trying to suggest somehow that, we're trying to give a bunch of handouts to people, which is just not true. This is a president who believes in his core that hard work must be rewarded, and if people aren't willing to work hard or be irresponsible, well, we shouldn't help them. But here's the question, George. Their whole theory was our whole campaign is just going to be the economy's not great and it's Obama's fault. Now they're on this Medicare thing. Now they're on this welfare thing. It's a remarkable thing. And so he didn't talk about welfare in his speech on Thursday night. The other thing he didn't talk about didn't talk in his speech, which I think is remarkable, is he didn't talk about the war we're waging in Afghanistan or our troops, which is an amazing thing for someone who wants to be 66 days from now elected as our commander-in-chief, not even talk about our troops or the war we're waging in Afghanistan. And maybe that's because Governor Romney called our ending of the Iraq War tragic. Has opposed our plans in Afghanistan in terms of bringing troops home. We're recovering 33,000 this September. So that was a huge omission, and I think a really remarkable thing. Final question. I got to ask you about Clint Eastwood. The president sent out that tweet on Thursday, and we're going to show it right now, put it up there. But I just have to ask, there it is, this seat is taken. I guess Governor Romney thought Clint Eastwood was pretty funny. Did the president? Listen, I think the president, myself, we all, I think everyone in America thinks he's been an amazing actor and director and an American treasure. I do think the Romney campaign would probably not 3 days after their convention still having questions raised about Clint Eastwood. So you'll have to ask them how that all went down. I don't think I think they probably had other business they wanted to transact. But we're all Clint Eastwood fans here in the Obama campaign. David Plouffe, thank you very much. Thanks, George.